All right, let's dive into Atomic Habits. We've got some excerpts from James Clear's book,
Okay.
and we're going to be talking about how to make lasting changes, just little tiny changes that
Yeah.
can add up over time.
Small things, yeah.
Did you know that British cycling
Oh, yeah.
went from like one gold medal in 76 years
Right.
to basically dominating like the Olympics and the Tour de France?
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible story.
They did it.
They did it by focusing on what they called like the aggregation of marginal gains.
Hmm.
It's basically making tiny 1% improvements
Right.
across every single aspect of what they do.
So we're talking about
Like
like
everything.
redesigning bike seats, testing fabrics in wind tunnels,
Yeah.
even teaching the riders like the best hand-washing techniques so they wouldn't get sick.
Right.
And those
Right.
small little things that you don't really
But
think are going to make
yes.
much of a difference.
Yeah, it's like compound interest, but for self-improvement.
Right.
If you can get just a little bit better each day,
Right.
those small changes compound over time.
Okay, so let's talk about how to actually make those changes stick.
Okay.
Clear breaks down habits into like a four-step process. Cue, craving, response, and reward.
Okay.
Think of it as a habit loop.
Right.
Your brain is going through this almost automatically.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you walk past your favorite coffee shop on your way to work.
Okay.
That smell of the freshly brewed coffee,
Okay.
that's your cue.
Okay.
It triggers that craving.
Oh, I want that caffeine.
Right. And that leads to your response. You go in and buy a latte.
Yeah.
And then the reward is that first sip.
Oh, so good.
But here's the interesting thing.
Okay.
Your brain starts linking that whole sequence together.
Oh, wow.
The smell, buying the latte, that feeling of satisfaction.
Yeah,
It all becomes wired together as a solution to your craving.
I see.
Clear calls this the problem phase and the solution phase.
Okay.
The cue and craving are the problem.
Right.
Your brain's saying like, hey, something's missing here.
Right.
The response and reward are the solution. Your brain's like, here's how we makes that.
So the more you repeat that loop, the
Then the-
more automatic it becomes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Clear tells this story about this woman who used to be a preschool teacher.
Hmm.
And she would constantly be like reminding kids to wash their hands,
Right.
all the time.
Gonna wash your hands.
And even years later, she had like a corporate job.
Yeah.
She found herself asking colleagues
No way. Really?
if they'd wash their hands after going to the restroom.
That's amazing.
It's fascinating how these automatic responses could become so ingrained.
So ingrained, yeah.
So how do we use this knowledge to build better habits?
Well, Clear lays out like a really practical framework.
Okay.
He calls it the 4 laws of behavior change.
Hmm.
These are basically rules you can use to design your habits and make them stick.
Okay, so what's the first law?
The first law is make it obvious.
Okay.
It's about bringing awareness to your habits and setting up clear cues
Okay.
that trigger those actions you want to take.
So how do we do that?
One really effective technique is habit stacking.
Okay.
You link a new habit
Right.
to an existing one.
Okay.
Let's say you want to start meditating every morning
Yeah.
instead of hoping you'll remember.
Right.
Stack it onto something you already do.
Hmm.
Like after I pour my coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Clear also tells this really cool story about an 18th century philosopher named Denis Diderot.
I don't know him.
He lived a pretty simple life
Okay.
until he got this, like, fancy new scarlet robe as a gift.
Okay.
And that robe, like, sparked a chain reaction.
What do you mean?
His old furniture looked shabby
Oh, I see.
compared to this luxurious robe.
Right.
He ended up replacing his desk, his rug, even got a fancy new mirror.
Wow.
It's called the Diderot effect.
Okay.
Is how one change can set off a cascade of other changes in our behavior and environment.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So we've made it obvious.
Right?
What's next?
What's the next step?
The second law is make it attractive.
Okay.
This is all about tapping into that dopamine reward system in our brains.
So we're talking about giving ourselves little treats.
Well, it's a bit more nuanced than that.
Okay.
What's really powerful is the anticipation of the reward, not just the reward itself.
Right.
That's what gets the dopamine flowing
Okay.
and makes us want to take action.
So how do we actually, like, harness that anticipation?
One strategy is called temptation bundling. You pair something you need to do with something you want to do.
Okay.
Like watch your favorite show while you're on the treadmill.
Okay.
The anticipation of that show makes exercising more appealing.
I like that.
Right.
So we've got make it obvious, make it attractive. What else?
The third law is make it easy.
Okay.
This is about reducing friction, streamlining the habit.
Okay.
We want to remove barriers that might stop us from starting.
So this is where that 2-minute rule comes in.
Exactly. Instead of reading for an hour,
Right.
Just start by reading one page
Mm,
instead of cleaning the whole house.
right.
Focus on putting away just 5 things. The idea is once you've started,
Yeah.
it's much easier to keep going.
Okay, so we've got make it obvious, make it attractive, and make it easy.
Right.
What's the final piece?
The fourth law is make it satisfying.
Okay.
This is about reinforcing those good habits
Uh,
with positive feedback.
so are we talking about those rewards again?
Rewards are definitely part of it.
Okay.
It's also about recognizing your progress
Mm-hmm.
and making the habit feel enjoyable.
Okay.
A simple strategy is habit tracking.
Hmm.
Use a calendar or journal
Right.
to visually mark your progress.
Okay.
It can be really motivating.
Like a visual reminder that
Yeah,
you're committed.
exactly.
Okay, so we've covered the 4 laws of behavior change.
Right.
What about breaking those bad habits?
Mm.
How do we do that?
Well, Clary tells this story about James Mitty.
Okay.
He owned a saloon back in the late 1800s,
Okay.
and he was struggling with employee theft.
I think I know where this is going.
You got it. He invented the cash register.
Right.
He made it almost impossible for employees to steal
Mhm.
by making that bad habit super difficult.
Okay, that's a pretty extreme example,
Yeah.
but I see the point.
It illustrates the principle.
Right. So on the other hand, we
Right.
can use technology to automate good habits.
Absolutely.
Like automatic savings deductions
Right.
or medication reminders.
Right.
Those make positive actions effortless.
Exactly.
But of course, we got to be careful with technology.
Yeah.
It could lead us down the rabbit hole.
Social media.
Right, like social media or binge watching.
Yeah, those platforms are designed to keep us hooked.
So true.
They're very good at it.
Now, let's talk about finding habits that are like
Okay.
naturally suited to us,
Yeah, like what are you good at?
where we might have like a built-in advantage.
Right.
Clear says to find activities that feel like fun for you,
Okay.
but like work to other people.
Yeah, I like that.
What are you naturally good at?
Like, what do you do that makes you lose track of time?
Right.
Where you enter that flow state. You're
Mhm.
just totally absorbed in what you're doing.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's a sign you're really enjoying the process.
But even with those like natural inclinations,
Right.
it's still building good habits still takes effort and discipline.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Clear quotes this Olympic coach who said,
Okay.
success comes down to who can handle the boredom of training every day, doing the same lifts over and over.
Wow.
It's not always about like passion and excitement.
Right.
Sometimes it's about just showing up,
Right.
even when you don't feel like it.
Right.
And that's where the idea of identity comes in.
Oh, tell me more.
Right.
Yeah.
Like our habits shape our identity.
Okay.
And our identity shapes our habits.
It's a feedback loop.
It is.
Yeah.
So if you want to be a writer, you start writing every day.
Right.
Even if it's just for a few minutes.
Yeah.
You want to be a healthy person, you make healthy choices.
It's about making those consistent choices
Right.
that align with who you want to be.
So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive,
Okay.
what are some of the key takeaways you're finding valuable so far?
Well, I think it's interesting how we often focus on those big changes when it comes to self-improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big dramatic changes.
Yeah, but Atomic Habits,
Right.
it really highlights those small, consistent actions.
It's easy to get caught up in
Right.
trying to make like sweeping changes overnight.
Yeah.
But Clear talks about this thing called the plateau of latent potential. It's this idea that we don't always see the results of our efforts right away.
It's like planting a seed,
Right.
You nurture it, you water it,
Right.
but for a while it looks like nothing's happening.
Right.
But underneath the surface,
Yeah.
those roots are growing.
Establishing a strong foundation.
Right, exactly.
And then seemingly out of nowhere,
Boom.
the plant shoots up.
Yeah.
Look, it's a great analogy
Yeah.
for how our habits work.
Absolutely.
We might not see those big changes immediately,
Right.
but those small improvements add up
Compound, yeah.
to something significant.
Wow. It's a good reminder to be patient
Absolutely.
and trust the process.
Yeah.
Speaking of process, one thing that really stood out to me was how much our environment and the people around us
Yeah.
influence our habits.
You're talking about that social contagion, right?
Exactly. How we pick up habits from those around us.
Yeah.
Clear points out that we're really susceptible to imitating the habits of 3 groups.
Okay.
The close, the many, and the powerful.
Interesting.
So think about it. We're always observing.
Right.
Observing the behaviors of our family, friends, colleagues,
Right.
even those we admire.
It makes you realize how important it is
Yeah.
to be mindful of who we surround ourselves with.
Right.
If we're around people
Exactly.
with healthy habits,
Yeah.
it makes it easier to develop those habits ourselves.
It's powerful.
That's why like
Yeah.
seeking out communities
Yeah.
or groups
Right.
that support our goals
Yes.
can be so impactful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Surrounding yourself with people
Like a support network.
who share our values, our aspirations,
Yeah, exactly.
creates that powerful network
Absolutely.
of support.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about how this applies to something like exercise.
Oh, yeah.
If you're trying to get into a regular workout routine,
Yeah.
it's so much easier if you have friends or family
Yeah.
who are also active,
Right.
who can join you.
It's like built-in accountability.
Yeah, like an accountability system.
It's more fun.
And it makes it more fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about environment, social influence.
Right.
Let's talk about dopamine
Okay.
and habit formation.
Yeah.
Clear says dopamine isn't just about pleasure.
It's more than that.
It's about anticipation and
Yeah.
motivation.
Yeah, that's key.
So it's not just about like experiencing the reward.
Right.
It's about the craving, that desire
That drive.
that makes us take action in the first place.
Yeah.
How do we harness that dopamine?
Well, remember temptation bundling
Yeah.
that we talked about earlier.
Right, pairing something we need to do
Right.
with something we enjoy.
Yeah, like listening to your favorite podcast
Right.
while you're doing chores
Right.
or catching up on emails.
By associating those tasks
Yeah.
with something pleasurable,
Yeah.
we make them more appealing.
You're more likely to get them done.
Now, Clear also talks about how our environment
Okay.
can be designed to, like,
Right.
support or sabotage
Yeah.
our habits.
Yeah.
Like small changes in our
So
surroundings
you make a big difference.
can make a big difference in our behavior.
Think about those snacks you keep in your pantry.
Oh, yeah.
If they're front and center,
Yeah.
you're way more likely to grab a handful.
Yeah.
But if you tuck them away,
Yeah.
you're less likely to snack mindlessly.
Right.
It's all about making those good habits easy to start
Right.
and bad habits hard to start.
I remember that study Claire mentioned about rearranging the drink options.
Oh, yeah.
In a hospital cafeteria,
Yeah.
they made water more accessible
Right.
by placing it at every drink station.
Yep.
And they saw a decrease in soda sales,
Wow.
an increase in water consumption.
Just by making it more accessible.
Just a small change.
Yeah. It's crazy how those environmental cues can
Right.
influence us.
It goes beyond food, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about your workspace.
Yeah.
Is it cluttered?
Right.
Is it distracting?
Yeah.
Or is it organized and inviting?
That's a great point.
Right.
Yeah.
A tiny workspace makes it easier to focus.
Yeah.
And on the flip side,
Yeah.
if your desk is stalled with papers,
Yeah.
it can feel overwhelming.
You don't even know where to start.
You don't know where to start.
Right.
So even a simple habit like clearing your desk
Right.
can have a ripple effect
Exactly.
on your productivity.
Yeah.
And don't forget about technology
Oh, yeah.
shaping our habits.
Right.
Technology can be a blessing and a curse.
It really can.
It can help us automate good habits,
Absolutely.
but it can also lead to some unhealthy ones.
Yeah, think about all those apps designed to keep us scrolling and clicking.
Right. They're designed to exploit our dopamine.
Yeah, they're very good at it.
It's a constant battle
Right.
against those distractions.
It is.
So how do we navigate that?
Well, one strategy is to be mindful of the time you're spending on those platforms. You know, setting limits.
Yeah.
Using website blockers.
Right.
Even scheduling specific times for social media.
So you're in control.
You're back in control.
And there are apps that are designed to support healthy habits.
Oh, absolutely.
There are so many great apps out there.
Yeah. For tracking progress, setting reminders.
Right.
Connecting with communities.
It's all about using technology to our advantage.
Exactly.
Rather than letting it use us.
Right. Taking back control.
Speaking of advantages,
Yeah.
let's talk about finding those habits
Okay.
that are naturally suited to our strengths,
Yeah.
our interests,
Like, what are you naturally good at?
figuring out which games we're good at.
Yeah, exactly.
Clear talks about how important it is to find those activities
Yeah.
where we have a natural inclination
Right. A talent.
or a talent.
Yeah.
It's about identifying
Yeah.
the areas where we excel effortlessly,
Right.
where we get lost in the flow.
Where it feels easy.
Right. Those are the habits that are most likely to stick.
Yeah. You actually enjoy doing them.
Right. We enjoy doing them. So
Right.
it's not just about forcing ourselves
Right.
to do things we think we should be doing.
Exactly.
It's about finding the activities
Yeah.
that light us up,
That bring you joy.
that make us feel energized.
Right.
And those might be different for everyone.
Absolutely.
What feels like work to one person
Right.
might feel like play to another.
Exactly.
Claire Tier tells us cool stories about astronaut Mike Maximino.
I don't know him.
He took this small robotics class at MIT,
Okay.
and out of the 10 people in that class,
Yeah.
4 of them became astronauts.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's incredible
Yeah.
how our environment
Yeah.
can shape our aspirations.
Yeah.
So if you want to develop a habit,
Yeah.
find a community
Yeah.
where that behavior is the norm.
Right.
If you want to be a writer,
Surround yourself with writers.
surround yourself with writers. If you
Yeah.
want to be a musician,
Hang out with musicians.
hang out with musicians.
Yeah.
Find your tribe.
Find your...
Create an ecosystem that supports you.
Absolutely.
But remember,
Yes.
even with those natural advantages,
Yeah.
building any habit takes effort
It does.
and consistency.
Yeah.
Clear emphasizes discipline is key.
Discipline is key.
Even when we're pursuing our passions.
Yeah. It's not always going to be fun.
He quotes another Olympic coach who said,
Hmm.
at some point it comes down to Who can handle the boredom of training every day? Doing the
Mm.
same lifts over and over and over.
Right.
It's a reminder that
Yeah.
mastery often involves repetition.
Yeah.
And a willingness to embrace
Yeah.
the less glamorous
The
parts
boring part.
of our pursuits.
Exactly.
It's not always going to be exciting. There will be days
Yeah.
when we don't feel like showing up,
Right.
when the motivation just isn't there.
Yeah.
And that's when discipline and consistency
Yeah.
become our most valuable allies.
Absolutely.
And speaking of consistency,
Yes.
let's talk about habit tracking.
Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing how those little things can add up over time,
It really is.
And one of the things I found super helpful that Clear talks about is habit tracking.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a simple tool, but so powerful
It is.
for making your progress visible
Right.
and keeping yourself motivated.
Absolutely. There's something so satisfying about like checking things off a list
Right.
or filling in those squares on a habit tracker.
It's like a visual reminder
Yeah.
that you're committed.
Exactly.
You're consistent.
And it helps you identify those patterns too.
Oh, yes, that's a good point.
Where you're struggling.
Right. If you're consistently missing a certain habit,
Yeah.
it might be a sign you need to tweak something.
Right. Exactly.
Maybe the cue isn't strong enough.
Right.
Or the reward isn't motivating enough.
Maybe there's too much friction.
Yeah, too much friction in the process.
Habit tracking gives you that data
It gives you the data.
to refine your strategy.
It's like a feedback loop for continuous improvement.
Exactly.
And speaking of improvement,
Yeah.
Clear highlights the importance of celebrating
Oh, yeah.
those small wins along the way.
Those little wins.
It's not just about reaching the end goal.
It's about the journey.
It's about enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
And acknowledging your progress.
Absolutely.
Finding those little moments of satisfaction.
Yeah, those little things that keep you going.
They keep you
It
going.
doesn't have to be a big thing.
Right.
Just a small, guilt-free treat.
Okay, so we've talked about the practical aspects of habit formation.
Right.
But Clear also gets into
Yeah.
the psychological and emotional stuff,
The mental game.
like the role of our beliefs,
Yeah, our beliefs can really hold us back.
how they can support or hinder our progress.
He talks about how our identity
Hmm,
can create a sense of pride
okay.
that prevents us from seeing our weaknesses.
It's like we get attached to this image of ourselves,
Right.
and any behavior that contradicts that image
Yeah, it's threatening.
feels threatening.
Like if you think you're bad with money,
Right.
it's hard to embrace budgeting or investing.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
But Clear says we got to challenge those limiting beliefs,
We need a growth mindset.
a growth mindset.
That can evolve. You can learn new skills.
And ultimately,
Yeah.
our behaviors are driven by our emotions,
Yeah, if you...
even when we have the logical reasons
Right.
to take action.
It's the feeling that drives us.
It's the feeling, the craving
The desire.
that pushes us forward.
Yeah, so find ways to make your habits enjoyable.
Right.
Make them intrinsically rewarding.
Like gamifying our habits,
Oh, I like that.
making them fun,
Yeah.
engaging like a competition.
A little friendly competition.
Right.
Yeah, or with yourself.
It also introduces this thing called the Goldilocks rule.
Oh, yeah, the Goldilocks rule.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
Okay.
The optimal level of challenge habits are most likely to stick when they're challenging enough to keep us engaged,
Right.
but not so hard that we just give up.
So it's got to be that balance.
That's it. Not too hard, not too easy.
Right. If it's too easy, we get bored.
Right.
Too hard, we give up.
You got it.
And speaking of boredom,
Yeah.
Clear says it's like,
It's a big one. One of the biggest threats to habit formation.
yeah, because once that novelty wears off,
Right. And we get good at something.
the repetition gets boring.
It can get monotonous.
Yeah. So we got to find ways to re-engage.
Keep it
Flying those sparks of joy.
So maybe introducing new variations.
Yeah, like mixing it up.
Setting new goals.
Right.
Finding ways to connect with others
Find your people.
who share our interests.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Atomic Habits,
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
what's the one takeaway that's really resonating with you?
For me, it's the reminder that real change takes time.
Yeah.
It's not overnight.
It's those small, consistent actions.
Day after day.
Day after day.
It's not about being perfect.
It's about progress.
It is.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Yeah, I love that.
So if you're ready to start building those atomic habits,
Yeah.
think about one small change you can make today.
One small step.
One small step that could have a big impact on your life over the next year.
You got it.
Remember, start small, stay consistent, and be patient.
Be patient with yourself.
And if you're looking for more,
Yeah.
I highly recommend checking out James Clear's book, Atomic Habits.
It's full of great advice
It is.
and inspiring stories.
It'll help you unlock the power of tiny changes.
It really will.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been fun.
Until next time, keep making those small steps
Yeah, those small steps.
toward the best version of yourself.